Hello lovely people. Today I'm gonna try to explain gain and gain matching with my visual aids with some spaghetti and some holes. So there's a lot of videos online on YouTube how to set gains correctly, how to scope and everything, but still a lot of people it's difficult for them to understand what actually is gain and why do we need to match the gain of the source and the gain of the amp. So this is my attempt. I know it looks silly, but just bear with me. So first of all, this is representation of the outputs of, in this particular case, going to be a head unit. So I have a 2-volt output, a 4-volt output, and 12 volts. So this is kind of a standard. So the cheaper ones like Android head units and stuff, they have 2 volts out. Like a standard RCA output is about 4 volts, and 12 volts is speaker level from the head unit. So we'll call it a high level, yeah? And on the amp, you have a knob that you turn, that's a gain knob, and you're adjusting the gain, what's called, yeah? So most amplifiers have a gain of up to 4 volts. So it can take up to 4 volt signal. And then you have either a switch or a separate input in the amplifier that can take a high level input up to 12 volts. And there are some others as well, but it's just as a basic, yeah? So this spaghetti is going to represent the signal. And let's assume that this particular signal is a 4 volt signal coming from the head unit. Okay, so let's the size of 4 volt, yeah? So first let's talk about the signal itself and what is it composed of. If I spread this spaghetti, you can see all of them, most of them are yellow. So in this particular representation, the yellow one is the signal itself, yeah? The music, the stuff that you're listening to. The green stuff is the floor noise, which is going to be always there and you cannot do anything about it. So the floor noise in the signal, it can be generated by the head unit or by the material, that like if you have like MP3s or whatever, or like you're listening to old music, those will have a high floor noise, yeah? And the red spaghetti is going to represent the clipped signal. Okay, so this is the maximum signal that you can send through the RCAs, let's say 4 volts. Yeah, so with this you cannot do anything. This is all good stuff, and this is the clipped one. So most head units, if you go like, they can do 4.1, 4.2 volts, and that point something is going to be all of this, the clipped signal, because if you ask a head unit to do the maximum that it can, it's going to give you a clipped signal. If you have the volume knob going up to, let's say, for example, 50 is going to be clipped, 49 is still going to be clipped, 48 is still going to be clipped, and 47 is going to be your clean signal. So this is clipped. So when we scope the head unit, when we put a scope on it and looking for a clip point, we're trying to get rid of the clipped signal. Okay, so if we do that first, then we have left with clean signal and some floor noise. But that floor noise, you cannot do anything about it. Well, technically you can. The thing is, every source, every head unit has different quality. So if I take, for example, this one, yeah, in my example, this is a very, very shitty signal. You have loads of floor noise and you have loads of clipping compared to the regular signal. And this, let's say it's a shitty Android head unit, the one you can buy for, I don't know, 50 pounds or $60 from AliExpress. This is gonna give you a shitty small, like 2 volts, and bad signal that has loads of everything, yeah? And if you're gonna buy a very high quality head unit, that's gonna give you, like for £1,000 or dollars, it might give you all of this without these. So you're gonna have this much noise, all the signal, and no clipped signal up to 4 volts or whatever. Yeah. So this is the signal. Now, if I'm gonna have 4 volts coming out of my head unit, so we did scope the head unit and we know that the clipped signal is not there because we removed it. So we have the volume knob on 47 that goes up to 50. We have it on 47. We don't have any clip signal. We have clean signal mixed with some floor noise. And then we need to match it with the amplifier gain. So if the amplifier says it can take up to 4 volts, and if you leave the gain at the lowest setting, that means it will need the full 4 volts to give you the maximum output. So if you have 4 volts coming out of the head unit, you put those 4 volts in the amplifier and everything works perfectly, spot on, yeah? If your amplifier has, it can take up to, let's say, 12 volts, just for example, and you have only 4, what's happening is you're sending everything from the head unit, all 4 volts, but the amplifier is half filled. No, this is just an example, it's not half, but let's say you will need much more signal to get the maximum output of that amplifier. Then you're increasing the gain, and in this example you're making the hole smaller until it fits this one. Now what happens if you have 4 volts coming out of your head unit and you crank up the gain? So you're making this small, even the hole even smaller. So you're making like this, and what's happening is you can fit some of the signal through the hole. Let me just, yeah, it's a very bad example, but it worked in my head when I had it. So you can fit some of the signal through, yeah, but not all of it. So you have full signal that fills up the gain, and you have the maximum output of the amplifier with this much signal. But this signal is all wasted because you have much more signal. So what's happening on the head unit, you crank up the volume. If in this example we have, it goes up to 50, you crank up the volume up to 20, and the amplifier is already making the maximum power. So you cannot use this extra signal that your head unit has. And what happens if you're trying to put more into that? So it cannot take more. So what's happening, the amplifier is clipping. Yeah? That's why it's important to match. If you have a 2 volt signal, like a smaller signal, but it's clean. So for example, older head units, they're up to 2 volts, yeah? And the head unit cannot give you more than 2 volts. It's giving you 2 volts. That's fine. You just turn the gain on the amplifier up to match it, and it's perfect, it matches. But if you have only 2 volts coming out of your head unit and your gain is set too low, you're not gonna get the maximum out of your amplifier. You need more signal to get the maximum out of amplifier. Then you just need to crank up the gain and make this hole smaller and get everything that you need from the amplifier. Yeah. One more thing, when you crank up the gain, basically when you amplify the signal, you're amplifying everything. So if you have, in this particular case, let's say 1, 2, and 3 of these, so this is the floor noise. Yeah, the floor noise, the amplifier adds floor noise because it has floor noise by itself as a piece of electronic. That floor noise, you can find it in the spec. It's called signal to noise ratio. The higher the better, that means it has less noise. But when you crank up the gain, you're amplifying this that is coming from the head unit, the noise. So that's why we say you would want to have as little gain as you can on the amplifier, so you wouldn't amplify any of the floor noise that is coming from the source, from the head unit. Yeah, I don't know, I will need to watch this video and see if it's not too silly, because it kind of worked in my head. Because the thing is, it's easier for people to understand when you have something visually you can see, because you can talk about volts, you can talk about dBs, levels and everything, but when you see it with some physical example, it's much easier to understand it. So if you understand gain matching a bit better, basically you need whatever you're giving from the head unit to match it with the amp. It's much more complicated and it involves electronics and everything, but this is just a very simple example as a basic for you to understand what is happening if you're giving too much signal, not enough signal, or if the gain is cranked up too high and stuff. So yeah, I hope that helped. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.